It would be no understatement to say that Sierra Leone is going through a difficult time at this particular juncture. The Ebola crisis is far from over, and in fact we've recently just had some disappointing news that there's been a new spike in cases in the western area, in Cambia and Port Loko. This points to the fact that there needs to be a doubled effort to get to zero. We've been warned that the road to zero would be long and bumpy, and indeed it is. It also behooves us to make sure that we can strengthen national institutions at this particular time. And the UNDP country office in Sierra Leone is working very, very hard to provide support to government to make sure that we can work on strengthening national capacities, not only to fight Ebola, but also to get back on the road to recovery. A very important conference is to take place in New York, in which the issue of recovery for the 3 countries worst affected by Ebola will be up front and center, the subject. Here in Sierra Leone, we are working to support the government on developing the recovery strategy. This strategy, in a way, has started since November last year, a process of negotiation with the government to make sure that the priority sectors most affected by Ebola in this country are supported and provided with the necessary resources, including finances, to keep them afloat. We have 4 key areas: health, education, social protection, and then revitalization of the private sector, including such sectors as water and sanitation and energy. All of these 4 areas require immediate support, and the UNDP country office has informed the process by undertaking a number of in-depth studies of the impacts of Ebola in these sectors and on the socio-economic impacts of Ebola across the country. Again, it's no understatement to say that this country has been severely impacted in the socio-economic sectors. At least $1.2 billion of investment have been lost. The country is struggling to attract investment back, and while Ebola rages, it will not come back. The mining sector, which has been the backbone of the economy here, has been severely affected. And of course the spin-off for all of this is that the men, women and children of this country are going through a very dramatic economic downturn. Livelihoods are affected, employment is affected, and people just eking out a living on one of the poorest countries of the earth are being affected on a daily basis. So it's very, very important that UNDP continues to support not only monitoring of the impacts on this country, but also to make sure that we can channel funds into supporting the sectors that most need support. One of the most important aspects, I think, of UNDP's work here has been to ensure that throughout the Ebola response, that the volunteers who are actually on the front lines doing the contact tracing, doing the social mobilization, delivering the food, getting kids back into school are paid. A big part of our work has been to ensure that 23,000 volunteer workers continue to get paid throughout this getting to zero phase and also into recovery. This is a massive operation for the UNDP country office. It involves ensuring that there are registration of those volunteers, that lists are updated, that the credibility of the payment system is intact. It also involves making verification and monitoring and evaluation of who's actually being paid to ensure that we keep a tight audit on what's going on. That process itself has been massive, and it's involved not only the mobilization of UNDP cash payment systems here in Freetown, but throughout the country. And now, of course, with a focus on the 3 areas that are worst affected and will continue to be affected by Ebola in the coming months. UNDP has been tasked by the United Nations Secretary General with lead of the recovery process. And this recovery process is something that we will remain engaged in on a priority footing for the next 2 years. It's very important that the donors and traditional and non-traditional continue to provide support to the government of Sierra Leone to get through this next phase of getting to zero, but also into the recovery. And we hope very much that New York will be a successful outcome, which will allow us to have the resources and the government to have the resources to continue our work as we go through to ensuring this country can get back on its feet from this devastating health crisis.